We just gonna sit around here and talk about how dumb we're getting? It froze for a second. We have all the creativity's gone. It's just gone. Wouldn't it be better if it all just blew away? Okay, so we don't get to restart the cutscene, sadly.
Don't let it happen again. Well, at least we're not glitching around like The Shining.
Yeah, you didn't see what Joker did last time. It was some hardcore General Grievous nonsense. You know what I'm talking about, if you know what I'm talking about.
That one doesn't even deserve any star. If you don't know what he's talking about.
Well, I mean, in the specific context of what Joker did that deserves, that warrants being... You'll know it if you knew it. This is not a good way to start. I think that's the problem, is we left off in a bad place last time. I should have given it, like, one more attempt. Because the problem is, starting in the middle of this nonsense is hardly conducive to thought. Then again, well, I'm not the one who's got those this week. You're the one who's got those.
What, all the thoughts?
All the thoughts, yes. But first, I demand that you explain yourself. Because, from the perspective of the gentle listeners, you just up and left them this week. Or this last week, I suppose. And it was not my fault.
Backlog.
No, we didn't. Nothing came out this Wednesday. What did you think I was going to post? I didn't have anything to post.
For some reason, I had it in my head that we had a backlog.
Well, we used to have a backlog back when our lives were sensible. No, we didn't have two ahead. All we had was the one that came out last Sunday.
Well, that's weird. I thought we were two ahead. So forgive me.
Yeah.
Gentle
it was your fault, and it wasn't even... You didn't even give me an excuse.
Yes, okay.
You were just like, I can't do it this week. Can we double up on Friday? And I was like...
The issue is, I had a family thing come up where I had to go down and be a part of something, and in addition to that... The adjustment of trying to do it in a different part of the week didn't really work out based on just... So it's not necessarily something I would ever apologize for because life happens.
Because I don't want to set a precedent.
But
we gotta keep them in their place. They can't get thinking they're too popular, too important around here. Ah!
Okay.
Whoa! He trampled me underfoot like a elephant. I don't know. Now the question is, the remote's being weird today. So is that too short a leash for you?
Nothing's too short for me.
Oh, okay. I'll let them judge that.
All right, put up your dukes.
And also your fists. Really? Not even a chuckle for that, eh? You're mad that I called you out, aren't you?
No.
You were hoping that no one was going to know.
No, I genuinely didn't realize we didn't have a backlog. I feel bad now.
Well, okay. I don't know why. Sure. When have we been organized in the last couple months? You'd think that with the moving and everything finally being settled and us actually having, the time again, you and making a big deal out about being no longer in school, and then it turns out our schedule's worse.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily change the fact that obviously we've got work and
you're just gonna keep letting him do that. Is he down for the count, or is he? Yeah, you let him get you down to one punch, man. You're making it up for this week because you've got a load of topics.
Yes. No, the reason that I missed is ultimately just because life happens, and that's
and you're
kind
not
of the bottom
important
line.
enough to him.
You're
important to me. I'm here for you guys.
And yet he didn't post without me.
Well, what was I gonna post? Just me talking for an hour about... I could have done that. Y'all could have just seen what my Wednesdays are normally like. Alright, this is me making dinner. This is me lying in bed with existential questions I can't resolve.
This is me slipping into madness. Staring into the abyss.
Okay, so about them topics you say you have. Ah! Woo! That was a weird thing.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to obviously go and...
just go crowbarring him in
blow the load of cash I have, but...
You have a load of cash. Is this new?
Yeah.
I never heard about this load of cash.
So, interesting bit of pop culture that I thought I'd bring up. I came across something that, for me, was not necessarily instantaneously.
I just snapped his ankles.
Like I wasn't dismissive of it instantaneously, although many probably would be. But there
still
is
don't know what you're talking about.
But there's a fourth Matrix coming out.
Now, is this confirmed,
has been, yes,
or is this
confirmed.
one of those we're gonna?
It's confirmed. It's actually coming out in December.
Okay, so it does have a date.
Yeah, it's got a date, and it's coming.
Well, okay.
So I don't exactly know. It's called Matrix Resurrection, which is very
Luddite that
messianic.
I am. Is that seriously not one of the ones already been used? There's a Matrix RE.
Revolution.
And then, but then there's another one. Isn't there a Reloaded in there too?
It's Reloaded Revolution. It's Matrix Reloaded, and then Matrix
Reconstitution, and then Matrix Rehydration,
and then
Matrix Real Estate Investment
Tycoons. No,
it's certainly a thing.
The next one after this is renal failure. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I hope not.
Okay, so anyway, I actually am not a terribly. I don't know whether I'm in the minority here. I don't feel like I am, but I actually really enjoyed all of the Matrix. I would not be one to defend the third one as like a great work of cinematic history. However, within the context or narrative of the larger series, I think it was fine. I mean, there was a degree of non-realism that you could embrace within the context of
the whole thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, within it being like, okay, we're in a computer game. Technically, is really what this is, and so we can. It's the whole. Even Morpheus set up at the beginning, like you could bend certain rules and break certain rules. So the whole you can stop bullets and dodge.
The real question is, what's the opposite of the phrase queeching? The phrase preaching to the choir. I have no clue what queeching to the prior would be. Oh boy!
I have a close guess.
Well, the fact that the second word is prior, I didn't expect that to work out like that. Well, now we found what the opposite is. So instead of talking to someone who already knows what you're saying, you're talking to someone who knows nothing about what you're saying. Now we know what we're going to call that.
Queeching to the prior.
Queeching to the prior. I am the prior in this instance because I have only seen the first Matrix film, so I have no context for the rest of them and whether or not I have certainly heard the whole concept that the third one's not great.
So what have you heard? Because
I've just heard that the third one's not great.
That's true. I don't.
That's about it.
Here's the reason that it wasn't good. For those people that liked the Matrix scenes or like within the actual Matrix construct. You're going to have a bad time with the third one because the majority of it happens outside of the Matrix. So it's a little more dystopian than I think most people with the first one were really comfortable with, maybe. The second one had about 50-50, I would argue, although you had a little bit more of an understanding of what was going on outside of the context of the Matrix. But I really thought that overall the third one was great. The ending gets...
Great? See, that's what I've heard is the controversial. I've heard plenty of people say that it's fine. It's just not great compared to the rest.
No, that's true. And here's the thing about the third one. It's great, or it's palatable up to a certain point. The very end ends horribly. It's really stupid ending that's like, what? This is very anticlimactic and kind of abrupt. But I don't want to spoil anything for those. Well, I feel like I should be able to because it's an old enough movie.
Well, I haven't seen it. But then again, I'm not sure that you'll ruin much of my life.
The bottom line is I'm
not any more than it's already been ruined.
I'm interested, but I am curious to know what y'all think because it is an interesting bit of
well, Pryor can't help you over here.
Yeah.
I'm over in the rectory trying to figure out what queeching is.
Don't think too hard about it. So anyway, suffice to say, I'm intrigued.
Well, that's a reasonable thing to say. Now, here's the real question. I'm going to sideline your topics with one of my own. I reject your topics and insert one of my own.
You're just okay.
Well, it's a minor aside, and it's somewhat related. There's
interpolating.
Sure, that's a word. Certainly. 3 movies with varying qualities, because they're always going to have slightly different quality. I should have done the math, but I couldn't have because I only just came up with this. How many combinations are there possibly for the quality order of a trilogy? I feel like if there's 3 movies and they're going to be compared, that means they could each have... There's going to be a first, a second, and a third in terms of quality. Which means... So wouldn't it be a factorial? 3 times 2 times 1? Because every time... Yeah, so it would be just... What, there's only 6... Is that 6? 6 possible combinations? He just smacked me with another dude. So there's only... So that... What are they then? In terms of rank? Where you're talking about like... You know, the first one, because the classic one is the first one's the best, the second one's and the third one's bad. That's what most people say the Matrix is.
Which is the Matrix is, yeah, 100%.
There's
Pirates adjustment, which is first one's great, second one's meh, and the third one's great.
But is the third one better than the first one in Pirates? I don't know that
I would argue that, but you probably
I would on a personal level. I think I like the third one more, but I'm not sure that it's the better movie. But that's a whole we're not going to get into the subjective versus objective. I was going to go the Fellowship of the Ring being the inverse, where they get better as they go on. First is I mean, in that case they all start from pretty good. First is good, second one's better, third one's the one everyone says is the best. Then the more unique cases are the ones in the middle. And I suppose the real question is, what would you use as the trilogy to exemplify it? Would you use Matrix as the quintessential they get worse as they go on, or is there another series that fits better with?
No, I think that's a fairly safe assumption, because the first one was very well
it was certainly
through.
It was certainly a cultural icon of its time.
I think that is why I would use that movie, is because it is such a cultural icon. Because notice no one talks about 2 or 3. Whereas
except to talk about their lack of
right. Whereas with Pirates, you don't necessarily get quite as much pop culture about the first one, but you also...
you get the most pop culture about the first one.
Yes, but I'm saying the second and third one aren't also then fully overshadowed by it.
Maybe not. Now, but the one that always comes to my mind, because I think it's I've seen it recently, and we never talked about this! I'm going to completely override your topics. I'm sorry.
So you're just...
What? No, but I'll circle back around because it's already perfect. It's almost like
what
I planned.
Are you, Jen Psaki?
Don't you dare! I am hurt on more than one level.
Okay.
I should just stop this right now.
That just fully took you back.
I am insulted and assaulted. Anyways, you ungrateful swine. This happened recently, or semi-recently, as recent as we can get. But to me, the one that I find interesting is the first one's great, the second one's real bad, and the third one sort of manages to recover. And to me, I mean, some people are going to argue, others, but I think the one that really stands out to me in that category is the Oceans films. Or Oceans. Oceansies. Yeah. Ocean's 11 is a great movie. Ocean's 12 is a stupid movie. And Ocean's 13 is an okay movie. Are we at least agreed on that synopsis?
Yeah, I think so. But you wouldn't... See, I would say Pirates is an equally useful thing. But it's probably less broad.
No, maybe. Because I don't think this...
It's probably got less of a broad audience. I think that's probably true.
Well, not than the Oceans movies. Those were fairly... I mean, Pirates was a big deal. Probably more than the Oceans films. I mean, it's
really?
Gonna be...
You think more so than the Oceans
Well,
films?
in the pop culture sense. I mean, I have no clue about what the box office was like when they first came out, but...
Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Well, yes, that's my point is... and the reason I brought it up, and the way I'm going to bring this back to you... You'll marvel at my genius segue skill. This happened recently with me with a film trilogy I watched, the John Wick films, which we've tried to talk about, and I never got the chance.
Yeah.
First one, great is a hard term for me.
I haven't seen any of these, so you then I'm the prior in this situation. Let's just keep milking that one for all it's worth.
That's the new. I'm using that forever now. I'm gonna knock over. I would say the first John Wick movie, everyone kind of went nuts for it, and it's a good movie, and I enjoyed it. I think the action was well done, and I think it set up a unique and interesting world where you're going. It's of course it's the whole, the assassin sort of industry, you could call it. It's a little Leon the Professionally, where it's like, what is the actual infrastructure of this kind of work? I have no clue if that's an apt comparison. I might be pulling that out of absolute thin air. But it sets up an interesting world where you're like, what is the actual criminal, dark web of assassins actually like? And they do, I think, an interesting job of that. And I think the second one was really not good because I think it has the exact same problem Ocean's 12 has, is where the term jumping the shark is the only one I think that applies, where you're going, it just is like, you're taking things way too far for them to make sense anymore. And it's like, because the problem is, this isn't really a spoiler, but the whole point is John Wick is an assassin, that's obvious, and he gets drawn back into the life of crime after leaving it. That's the whole point of the first movie, is he gets sucked back in for various reasons. I won't spoil why. The second, and they have this very subtle and interesting idea where it's like there's this is again not light minor spoilers. There's like this hotel in New York, which is on the surface a totally normal hotel, but which is a front for this sort of assassin network, you'd call it, where it's like if you know the right people to talk to, you can get the right connections there. And that's an interesting idea. But the problem is the second film takes it way too far, where it's like now it's an international organization and there's hotels all over the world. And the point of the second film is he ends up getting in trouble with this assassin organization, again, for reasons I won't spoil. And he ends up basically being ostracized, which means he no longer has the protections that being in the organization grants you. Because that's one of the things they make up in that movie, is it's like, oh, if you're a part of the order, there's no order on order violence. You're not allowed to. If you get in trouble with the organization,
so it's a little bit like the Bratva, a little bit. I mean,
I suppose where you're going, there's no infighting. They don't tolerate infighting.
Right. Which is, I suppose, a fair rule for an assassin's
it would make sense. But the problem is, he gets kicked out of that by the end of the second film. He's kicked out because of the plot of the second film. And so naturally, a bunch of the people who've got grudges with him are like, "Oh, well, now he's up fair game." But the problem is, they make it's like every fifth guy in New York is an assassin at this point, because the very end of the movie is basically him having to escape after he's been kicked out, and it's like now he's fair game, and you're going, literally, like every fourth guy he passes on the street tries to kill him, and you're going, it takes it from, oh yeah, I bet you there are random assassin safe houses built into.
It
semi-obscure
the argument too much.
Yeah, because then you're going, the whole international, like, oh, it's an international organization of assassin people, and they're everywhere, and everyone is one of them. It's like, this takes it far too far, and it's just, I don't know. And then the third one manages to sort of overcome that. It's the same thing with the Ocean's movies, where the second one was really dumb and way overdid it. So the third one has to try and restrain itself. And so that's the same thing as that. Like, it manages to tone it down a little bit, but because of the stuff they've already introduced, they're stuck with a few things they can't get away from.
Undo, yeah.
Yeah, that's my point. But Keanu Reeves, other movies Keanu Reeves has been in.
Well, no,
that's my segue back to you. Take it away with the Matrix stuff.
Well, Matrix stuff, but I'm curious within John Wick. I think
about Keanu Reeves as an actor.
Well, that
people say he's not great, and
we disagree thoroughly.
You disagree thoroughly. I disagree in slightly less zealous terms.
You have some caveats, huh?
I've never seen him in a role that I was like, wow, he's great. Even in John Wick, I'm a little like, it's a little bit of a hard sell.
I've never seen him in a role that's poor.
Have you ever seen whatever version of Dracula he was in? I forget which one it's called, but he was in one of them.
Dracula's a little hard.
Now, thankfully, before any of those who don't know, he was not actually Dracula in that film, because that couldn't have been taken seriously.
My name is Keanu Dracula. Wait a minute.
I'm doing terribly. Oh, and I've been. You got me off talking about Keanu Reeves, and I kept stealing turns.
Like the cereal.
Is that how you perceive him to talk?
That's how he talked. Back in his earliest career, he was typecasted as like the dumb kind of druggy.
G is for ganja.
Yeah, a little bit. He was kind of the Shaggy character back when he was. I can't remember which movie it was. It wasn't Breakfast Club, was it?
Ironically, he's gotten more Shaggy as the years have gone on. I'm talking about his appearance, though, not his drug habits.
Like Zoinks, man. I'm pretty sure that's Keanu Reeves.
I've never seen him in a film and gone, wow, he's a good actor. I mean, I suppose it's not like, wow, this is awful, but that doesn't make someone a good actor just because I don't have those thoughts.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I don't know that I would qualify mine. I think he's far better than people give him credit for, and I do think that...
I don't know how people give him credit for. I think most people give him my level of credit, which is,
yeah. Yeah, it's fine. It's just...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's not gay, Kathleen.
Wow. He just... Oof. Joker pounded you right in the jelly beans.
Oh, he's gonna gloat about it, too.
We're going to do it again, where we're going to stay in this room the whole time, never getting out of this fight. Have they explained what the plot of this new Matrix is going to be?
They haven't specifically, but I want...
Because did the third one end in a way that needed
I'm curious
more?
About what your
perspective is on Keanu
trying
Reeves?
to understand the whole trilogy thing. I mean, what was your...
I just
never really buttoned that.
Because I don't know. I think like there's too many. I just feel like I would say...
You're saying what's the best one? Or
I'm saying it's interesting. What would you how would you classify them if you were a film theater, like a film professor, and you were going to typify like, here we have an example of the Lord of the Rings progression where they get better as they go on, or the Matrix progression where they get progressively worse. What would you use for some of the in-betweeners, like the Oceans, where it's like the first one's great and the second one's terrible and the third one sort of manages to recover?
Well, I think you've done a fairly apt job at saying...
Because I'm trying to think of... There can't be that many. I think I'm right in the math in saying that there's only 6 variations. Yeah. There's the direct upward ramp, the downward ramp, I suppose...
And then the sporadic chaotic ramp.
I suppose there's the Icarus ramp, if you wanted to go that route, where the first one's terrible and the second one's great and the third one's not as good as the second one, but maybe better than the first.
What? How is that?
It's low.
Well, I suppose
you get what I'm talking about. The low to
Icarus,
rise to low again,
yeah.
Or there's the opposite, the high to low to high. I forget what that one's called. I think that's just
that's called a mid scoop.
I think that's a fairly standard.
That's for those of you that are EQ buffs like us.
Sure, like us. I think you mean you. I don't know. The problem is I feel like too many of those would be too simple because, like, technically there's 2 variations on the Icarus where the first is better than the third or the third is better than the first, but both are worse than the middle one. I can't think of one for any of those cases. Like, I'm not sure I could think of a movie that this...
Call it chaotic good.
Well, that doesn't... But that's not at all. It doesn't explain it in the slightest.
Sure, but that's why it's chaotic good. Just embrace the Tao of that and leave it alone.
I'm not even going to embrace that. We're just going to leave it alone.
Anyway, okay.
I'm not sure I had anywhere to go with that. It was mostly it was an excuse to talk about the Ocean's films and John Wick.
Well, and I think...
Because I was thinking about the Ocean's films again lately, and they just continued to make me mad.
Do you feel like John Wick and the Oceans relate in like how the progression's similar? Or
well, only in the sense that the second one jumps the shark and the third one has a hard time recovering.
So
they're not thematically related.
Sure, for sure. But
I mean, I suppose other than in the organized crime, semi-heist movie kind of way.
Yeah.
Although John Wick's not exactly a heist, but it's planning a hit, essentially. It's
stealing people's souls.
Yeah, it's a heist on life. Life heist. I've just created the next 80s film.
I think within the... So...
I am
the
getting...
broader range of...
Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves is... Well, seriously.
Oh, I thought you were kidding. The broader range of Keanu Reeves. The problem is I don't know what all he's been in.
Well, I don't know that I know everything he's been in, but...
I mean, I know he was in a bunch of stuff when he was younger.
Yeah, that's... So, what I was going to say was... I know he was in... See, this is... But see...
Wasn't he in that one Lake House movie?
I think that movie's great.
I have not seen it.
Now, part of the reason I think that movie's great is because I have a weird...
You have a thing for Keanu Reeves, clearly.
I have a weird thing for Sandra Bullock.
It's not as weird if it's Sandra Bullock. It's just a thing for Sandra Bullock at that point. I don't think you'd call it a weird thing.
But, well, some people would. But the bottom line is...
okay. I mean, some people would call...
I think he's in a lot of movies that people wouldn't necessarily assume or know that he's in.
Well, because he doesn't look like he used to.
Because he's in... did you know that he's in The Man from Tai Chi? Which is
that would be predicated on my knowing The Man from Tai Chi first.
No, the man of Tai Chi.
Queeching to the prior.
Queeching to the prior. So the bequeath thee, me prior.
Not even. I was gonna go. That's my dear feline prior. Bequeath. Oh, platinum reference and some soap for you to wash your mind out with that one.
So, I just...
it's your turn again. I keep stealing turns.
Way back when, though, he did a lot of weird ones, like the... I think the one that he probably was known and what gave him kind of the stupid rep was the Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
I don't even know that one.
Then there was...
What's the one that became the meme? They've all become the meme.
That had to have been Point Break.
Was that the one when he's... It's hard to describe what that meme is. You know the one I'm thinking, though, right? It's like him making the face, and it's like, oh, what if, blah, 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 blah.
I'm fairly confident that's Point Break.
Sure.
But anyway, I just think he's had more... First of all, I think as an actor himself, he's a stand-up guy that's more than
I've heard a lot of people have said that about
humanitarian.
Where they're going, you know, regardless of what you think of his films, he's actually quite a nice person.
And he's a very successful guy on a
doesn't he own a bike shop?
Yeah, I was about to say he owns a whole bike brand, motorcycle brand.
Is it a brand? I thought it was like a restoration shop.
I'm fairly confident it's a brand. He owns his own motorcycle brand.
I thought it was just a shop.
It sounds like in my head for some reason that's coming out motorcycle, which drives me nuts when people call it that. But
is it spelled sickle like the implement?
No, it's not. It's obviously motorcycle. I'm just saying I'm hearing it in my head as motorcycle, and I don't know.
As motor? Oh, I don't know. I guess
when I'm saying it, and it's bothersome. Okay.
You are getting pounded into marmalade. There's marmalade, bat butt marmalade.
Yellow.
Why is yellow?
Why is yellow not working?
Why is yellow not working? It's the counter, but you can't counter Big Hammer Man. He comes in like a wrecking ball.
He comes in like a wrecking ball.
Okay, I'm gonna have to hunker down and try to get this. Are you done fanboying over Keanu Reeves?
So no, I'm not. It's not necessarily.
You're gonna have to furnish us with some films that you think we should watch if you're gonna make the case that he's better than we think.
Well, I think Man from Tai Chi is worth watching. I definitely think.
But see, even that name sounds. Because man from Tai Chi, no man can be from Tai Chi.
Or the man of Tai Chi, sorry.
That helps a lot if you get the name right.
The man of Tai Chi. The other thing I think that's worth watching would be The Lake House. If you are...
Oh, so that is actually the name of it.
Yeah.
I just knew that a lake house was involved.
Yeah, if you're into kind of the more rom-com-y, or
is
you're okay with it...
I thought it wasn't some kind of weird psychological...
No, it's a rom-com.
But isn't it like... Okay, maybe I'm thinking of a different
It's got a bit
film.
of a twist to it, but it's definitely
a big twist, though, doesn't it? Isn't it like a reality-bending twist?
No. Well, sure, but it's not like... It's not like...
It's not an M. Night Shyamalan reality-bending twist. Oh, here's a joke I prepared earlier.
Well, no, let me defend the movies real quick.
Fine. Whatever. I was trying to get my what's her name?
What? Just give it.
Julia Child on. Here's one I prepared earlier. Whatever. Say, defend yourself.
Constantine is...
Well, I have heard that was a terrible movie. Not necessarily because of him. I've just heard that it was a horrendous adaptation of the source material.
Well, but see, that's hardly can be...
I've heard, major league horrendous adaptation. Well, not V for Vendetta horrendous, worse than that.
Sure, but what I'm saying is, if you have no context of the source material, is it a good movie objectively? That's my question.
Let's see, that's... who knows? I am not a fan of the Constantine comics. I've never read them, so I am not the one to say I forget about Titan Man every time he comes in. He is the fly in my ointment. And I forgot about the Hammerman, too. What else?
I think that's probably it. I mean, again, The Matrix easily, and
that's certainly his most famous film.
Of course, the most influential of his career. But
certainly influential. John Wick's, I feel like Matrix is one of those movies where everyone knows it, but then maybe that's just because I'm of the era where everyone of my generation knows it. John Wick may actually become his new most famous movie for the younger crowd.
That's true. I don't...
And there's no way I'm getting out of this,
I
but I also
think anyone could say that he is not prolific as an actor. I think he is in
but that's not always a sign of quality.
I don't
just
think it's
having
not.
been in a lot of stuff doesn't make you good.
He's like, if he's a B-lister,
he's absolutely he's the top of the B-list.
Yeah, I was about to say
he's the B-sides.
He's fishing the line. He's kind of threading the needle.
He's a big fish in a small pond.
I think that's a pretty...
He's fishing for big fish in a small pond.
He's trying to swim with the big fish.
He's swimming with the big fish now. What are we on about?
So, anyway, that's Keanu Reeves.
Is that him coming in? Hi, Keanu. It's a weird name, isn't it?
It is
Keanu? Is he where's he from? Is he South African or something? I'm guessing South African.
South African?
Because Elon Musk's South African. It just feels
really?
Every weird name South African, it turns out. Every guy who looks like he's an American but has a weird name, it's probably South African. Wow. I'm not generalizing at all. What are you talking about? I'm looking it up. Hang on. You take another turn. I've stolen plenty. Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Dracula. No.
Keanu Reeves. Canadian. Born in Beirut. I would never have guessed that in a million years.
That's all I'm saying. Again, outside of his acting career, he owns his own bike.
Owns his own bike.
Either his own bike shop or it's some sort of actual brand. I'm pretty sure it's a brand. I'm fairly confident it is. He also is quite the philanthropist.
It's evidently a Hawaiian name, despite the fact that he is not Hawaiian.
Well, that's weird.
He was born in Lebanon.
Is it proper Hawaiian or is it Fijian?
Don't ask me these things. Keanu's father was born in Hawaii. Of British, Portuguese, and native Hawaiian and Chinese ancestry. What? Okay, so Keanu's dad's like everything. Okay. Well, there you go. So Hawaiian, I would not have guessed that. Then again, I wouldn't have guessed the Chinese or the Portuguese part either. But so I was wrong about the South African. Sorry, Elon. I don't know why I brought you up to bring this in.
Darn it, Elon.
Gosh, dang it, Elon. Can we get on to something else?
So it's an interesting thing that I'm excited about because it's worth seeing for me at least once.
I would have to see the rest
I will give you an update on it because I will also be the one that will probably be its biggest critic as well.
Well, you'll certainly have the most founded criticisms.
So
all right, I'm getting this over with.
But I thought that the way that it ended was great, which was basically
the way it ended. What are we talking about?
The way you asked whether the previous kind of trilogy ended in a way that it needed the...
You said the ending was awful.
What I'm saying is it ended very concisely, even though if it was abrupt, it was very much like, okay,
but does it resolve the story?
It does, so I don't know why they're doing this.
Okay, I thought you were saying it was terrible in that it didn't resolve the story.
No, it's not that it didn't resolve the story.
That's the only thing to me that makes an ending terrible, is to not resolve the story. Being poor is, maybe it doesn't do it well, but as long as
and I'm also, I suppose, kind of the type of person that unless there's actually an ending that I go, wow, that makes you feel like this was a great...
I gotta feel warm and fuzzy on the inside.
Not necessarily warm and fuzzy. That makes me feel like some sort of a weird kind of...
A weirdo? What else are you?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a...
I don't know. I'm weird, but I don't know. I'm that weird.
I don't know that I emote that much about movies. Wow. I think that I expect at least...
Closure,
yeah.
I suppose that's a reasonable thing to expect. No one wants to watch a film that doesn't end well.
Well, because there's a difference to me between resolution.
It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a happy ending, but closure is closure whether it's happy or not.
Well, and resolution things can be resolved and not be necessarily closed. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I don't exactly know.
Okay, so here's what I mean.
Inception, is that where you're going next?
No.
It's the first thing that comes to mind when I think resolved but not closed.
Yeah, that's probably. I mean, it's a good.
Have I talked about
comparison.
If I talked about how Inception and Dark Knight should have different endings, or rather, they should have each other's endings?
Yeah.
I know we've discussed this. Have I discussed it on air?
Yeah, I think we did.
On air?
I think we did. If we didn't, it was in one of the lost episodes.
Well, but see, that's what we can never remember. Well, should I bother?
Quick recap.
Spoilers, definitely, because we're talking about endings here. Inception ends when he spins the top, and it starts to... You can't tell if it's going to stop or not at the end of the movie, so it's like you don't know if it's reality or not. And they don't show you. Dark Knight ends with...
And there's some great arguments for both sides, so...
Well, okay. Are you going to give them? Because I'm not. I thought I was being brief.
Well, I'm just saying... The one argument...
Okay, we're doing better here.
The one argument that's for the fact that it is a dream...
Let me get them out first, and then you can criticize.
Okay, that's
I'm going to die, and there's not that many guys left. Oh, but he's got a knife. I'm never going to survive that. Oh, I'm still alive. Okay, perhaps topics on hold. No. Well, I got close.
He said no.
Dark Knight ends. Spoilers again. Alfred's in Italy doing his normal ritual, and we talked early in the film about his fantasy of finding Bruce there one day with a wife and blah, 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 blah. He looks up from his, table, and he looks startled, and you see the reaction on his face, and then it cuts, and you actually see Bruce Wayne there with the Catwoman. And I think those films absolutely should have swapped. I think Alfred should have looked up, you see the surprise on his face, you see the little smile, but it doesn't show you. I think that's far better. I think Inception raised the stakes too much of the whole reason he's doing this, and the whole point of this is for him to be able to come home. To be like, oh, but is he really home? I think they should have had it where even if you didn't fully want to swap them totally, and you could argue this happens, but I don't think it's obvious enough. I think even if they had made it where like the top starts to fall over, but you don't see it come to a full stop, that alone would have been enough for me. Because it really doesn't at all. I mean, you might argue that it wobbles a slight bit right at the very end, but it's like a frame or two. So anyways, that's my opinion. Those films should have swapped endings.
Well, within the
at least it was the Joker that time who gave you a good clock.
Within my defense of the resolution versus actual closure, there are times that a movie on the wider context of the plot is resolved, but there are all these random little side either character arcs or things like that. Are you about to bring up
Lord of the Rings again?
No, not specifically.
Oh.
But there are all these like side arcs that are not closed. Like you're going, okay. Like, and again, Inception is a great case in point because you're going, okay.
Well, I feel like all the side arcs
overall is resolved, but then you don't know whether his whole family thing is resolved. Really?
Well, I feel like you have to be a pretty Eeyore of a person to be like, it's probably still all a dream.
That's true.
You'd have to be really committed to that level of misery.
Yeah.
To be like, yeah, because then that implies that means that they weren't just going 3 layers deep, which was supposed to be impossible. They were going 4 layers deep because they went 3 layers in within someone else's dream. So now you're talking about even the thing they said was impossible on the first level is less than what... I don't think that there's enough reason for that. Which is why I think they should have given you better closure, since they can't reasonably expect you to think... to entertain the possibility. So why not just give us the resolution instead of being like, we gave you no reason not to believe the resolution, but we're still not going to give it to you. I don't know.
So, anyway, Resurrection, we'll see.
Oh, that's not the name of it. I thought you were just going to bring up the topic of Resurrection.
So
anyways, Resurrection. Now for the rest of the evening, I'd like to talk to you about Jesus.
I'd rather you didn't. What? At this point, even the Pope's going, hey, man, I keep working work.
Okay, we were both talking about the Jim Gaffigan bit. That's the second time I've called him John Gaffigan. We are talking about that, though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So anyway, the whole.
I don't know why that didn't grab the guy I wanted it to grab.
It was an interesting.
We still talking about how much money Keanu's making?
Yeah. Because
boy,
it was shocking to be honestly. I was like,
to be honestly.
I said to me honestly, because I did not expect there to be another movie. I was a little bit like,
well, it has been what, like 15 years?
Well, and it seems more than a little unnecessary, I suppose. So even as a fan of the series,
it's a little bit like, it's the whole go set a Watchmen thing, isn't it? To take it back to the literary level, you're going, why? Of course, there's reasons for that, apparently.
Well, cash cow reasons.
Well, but not even
the person.
Exploitative reasons,
exactly.
arguably. But whatever. So, I don't know. But then again, are you trying to tie into an earlier topic, or are you going to use that to leapfrog somewhere else? Because I could use it to leapfrog somewhere else.
Were you thinking of the earlier topic as in
yes,
Dropic?
One that was lost. Dropic? Did you just coin the term?
No, I'm saying...
I was talking about... Yeah, that one.
This?
The whole reboot culture thing.
Oh, no, I wasn't specifically going to go there.
Because it makes sense.
Talk about that.
well, because the reason I think it's relevant, and by relevant I mean it's no longer relevant, because this was another topic I tried to start back when it was fresh. We talk a whole bunch about why people ought to stop demanding reboots for things that were already good, because at best all it can do is be equally as good.
You're making it worse.
Well, no, the best that could happen is it would be just as good. Because it's not. I mean, I suppose you could argue it could somehow get better, but that's never. The statistics don't bear that out. There are plenty of statistics that bear out the idea that it could certainly get worse. So that's.
It's gonna get a lot worse. It's gonna get a lot worse.
But the reason why this came to a question in my mind is because I semi-recently, except no longer recently, but within the past year, let's say, I watched Gravity Falls for the first time, which was a show that was around when I was younger, in like the middle school age, and it was getting all of the hype and stuff, but it passed me by for some reason. And so I watched that recently because it's on Disney Plus now. That's why. It's because I'm mooching off of you. And so I was like, I'll finally give that a shot. I need something to watch, that's fairly short, because I think it's only 2 seasons. And I'll admit, I fell victim to the thing I claimed we should all be above. Because there's a part of me that's like, now that it's been a while, I kind of would love to see a reboot. But not a reboot. I think reboot's the wrong term. I would love to see a continuation of that. Where it's like, I was going to say like what they did with Friends, but nobody liked that, apparently. I never watched Friends to begin with, but I've heard that the reboot thing they tried to do...
really bad.
Yeah.
Which is why I think iCarly's going to go even worse.
Well, that's happening now, too. And I do not at all have enough nostalgia for iCarly to be like, oh, yay.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in the Drake and Josh era.
Yeah, well...
if Drake and Josh came back, I'd be happy, especially because Drake Bell's, I think, in prison now.
No, he's not.
He's on trial for something.
What? He was overseas doing some weird thing with the singing and bits.
Yeah, there were certainly bits involved.
Wow.
He's been convicted of doing something he shouldn't have. Let's just say it that way. I have no... Well, okay, I suppose I should be...
I was about to say, can you substantiate
I'm not certain he's been convicted, but he's certainly been on trial for doing something he shouldn't have.
Yeah, but is it...
It was not, from what I gather, it was not he's not popular enough for anyone to go targeting him for that reason. We're talking in the whole, like, someone trying to just claim wrongdoing so as to get money from a famous person. Because, like, if you were going to do that, you wouldn't go to Drake Bell.
That's probably true.
So, I don't know. Whether or not, I haven't been keeping up with it. But the point of the matter is,
I was more,
whatever.
Even with that show, I was more interested in Crazy Steve, which is why I liked iCarly, because of Spencer.
Yes.
Because it's the same character, essentially. Just
basically. Well,
carbon copy of the same character.
Crazy Steve was genuinely unhinged. Steve Spencer in that was, I think, a little... He had a job and couldn't afford an apartment. And
yeah.
He technically had, like, the legal... Whatever you call it. Legal... What is it? Guardianship? Guardian... Because wasn't he technically her guardian?
Yeah.
Because you're going... So technically, he clearly had enough responsibility. He was just a goof. And that's way different than being unhinged. I don't know. It was not my era of show. But Gravity Falls, however, is a great show. You should watch it, because you now have access to it, too. And so, I don't know. It made me question, I suppose, my earlier established notion, which is, this is always a bad idea.
Well,
then again,
I think you're just... your nostalgia's talking to you
but it's not nostalgia, because I didn't have it as a kid. I recently watched it for the first time, and was like, oh, I enjoy this.
But are you falling victim to the fanhood?
Maybe. But that's where I go... Can you think of anything that has succeeded? Because that would show that it's possible. Because if it's possible, then it's not necessarily wrong to hope. You just don't want to get your hopes up. That's what I'll say.
I think you're defeating your own purpose, though, because you made the argument that this analytics doesn't bear that out.
I said the update is never better, and I still think that's true.
Yeah, so
the best it can be is on par. Well, yeah, but that's
on par. Yeah, I suppose
that's not a bad thing. If they released a,
Yeah, that's kind of what happened to Psych, though. I actually really liked Psych. Well, you
the Psych movies were garbage.
See, I liked them, but
no,
you disagree.
They were stupid and terrible. And I didn't even really love Psych that much by the end. I got tired of it.
Well.
But, so I don't know. Can you think that's perhaps the right example? Can you think of an instance where a reboot of something old and beloved was done that managed to do it well?
I'll tell you when it wasn't well.
I suppose
Indiana Jones. Well, the newest one with Shia LaBeouf went.
Well, that's not even new at
this
point.
Tank.
I suppose the term reboot is the problem, because that implies starting over.
Yeah.
And I think really what you'd have to call it is the continuation thing, because I think reboots in general, we had this whole discussion with the Walter Mitty conversation. You're going, you can't remake a film until it's suitably old that you can do something new with it.
Right, that was actually a reboot, but...
Yes, because it's basically the same plot, but updated for a modern audience, because the original audience is mostly dead. Or very old. Whereas, if the audience is just, people who watched it as a kid who are now adults, then don't bother, because all you're going to do is ruin it. At least, in my opinion. I have never seen an instance of that go well. So, a continuation, I think, is the better, where you're going, it acknowledges the existence of the prior. That's why a lot of people called the Tron movie a remake, which it wasn't, because it established that film... Whatever it was called, Tron Legacy?
Tron Legacy, yeah.
That acknowledged that the first film happened. It was not...
No, it didn't.
Absolutely.
No. In Tron Legacy, it acted like it was building off of the first one?
Do you recall the plot of that film at all?
Yes, very much so.
The whole point is that his dad went missing and he goes to find him as an adult.
Which is what the plot of the first movie is.
No.
Yeah.
He's a child in the first movie. He doesn't... Is the kid even around in the first film? We're talking... Sam Flynn is the main character of Tron Legacy. Kevin Flynn is not. Kevin Flynn is a side character.
The first one, yeah.
I don't even know if Sam Flynn's been born in the first movie.
I'm saying
they acknowledge that
very similar progression.
Yes, it has a very similar plot, but it does not pretend the first movie never happened.
Well, maybe that's true.
And I think that's a crucial difference, because pretending that's this is new. This is a new idea. It's like, no, it isn't. All you're doing is the same thing but poor. It's what Disney's doing these days. Ironically, Disney managed to do Tron Legacy. It's one of those bizarre moments of actual... Well, I mean, I don't want to call it actual thought, because some people will still call it ripping it off. And that's probably a fair criticism. But, I mean, you got to acknowledge what they're doing now is just stupid. But,
well, with the whole...
Because then they're literally going, oh, yes, this... Yeah, that's literal me remaking, rebooting. You're going... we're just going to write over this and pretend the first one didn't happen, and we're going to remake it differently. And we're going to try and capitalize on nostalgia that we're equally ruining because we're changing what it was. We've talked about it enough.
Well, yeah,
But so can you think of an example, we still have yet to do so, of a time a continuation to a beloved series was brought out and it did as well as... I thought I was getting away. As the original. We have been in this room
for 12 hours.
For 15 minutes we've been doing this. I thought we'd knock this out and finally move on.
This Joker never surrendered. Isn't that sad?
I'm gonna have to refill my water bottle. This thing's huge.
Okay. I got a question.
Well, you can't stand in the middle of the dudes. I got a question. Why don't y'all stop it? What is your question? You cannot win this by just countering only.
Well,
it will take 12 years. You don't do enough damage by counters to... I mean, it certainly would be possible in that you would likely not take much damage, but you will be here forever, and you can't counter that dude.
Or apparently
or chairs, apparently. Notice. So, yes, it's theoretically possible, but it would literally take, like, probably an hour with this many guys. Especially because new guys are getting at it all the time.
Well, are they, though? How can I stop that? That's the question.
You can't stop new guys from being added. That's the progression of the fight. Because the big Titan dude comes along after a while, and he's got backup with him. I mean, there's a fixed number of guys you have to fight. Hey. So can you think of an example? Because here's my thought. Allow me to develop... Well, but you haven't seen it.
What?
The Gravity Falls. I was going to say, allow me to develop what I think should be done with Gravity Falls, but the problem is...
Kind of follow-up, yeah.
Well, the problem is you haven't seen it, and thus... You should have watched it. You've had the 6 months since the last time I tried to talk about this. You should have watched it in that span of time. Basically, I just think the way they leave it off is, of course... Okay, meta spoilers here. This isn't really spoilers. The whole structure of the show is the kids spend summer with their weird great uncle. That's the whole point of it. At his weird shack in, I think Oregon is where they're at. Some small town in Oregon. That's the whole point. So the show ends with the summer being over and them going back home. But they have this whole little interaction where it's like, oh, we'll see you next summer. And they don't actually establish that, but it's like, well, that certainly is possible. That fits the world and the characters. So I just think that's all it should be. Is they should have it be like them coming back for another summer. You could have them be older. You could have it. There's relationship possibilities that could be developed, and I won't say anything more about that because that'll get into spoilers. But those of you who know. How many times am I going to say that? That's my useless help for the day. Is those of you who know will know. It's right up there with whatever will be, will be. Anyways, I think it could be done where you could develop, because then it's different. It's change. It's not just let's do the same stuff. It's what could we do differently? Because the characters are older, thus we could explore different dynamics. And I think that would work. And I think the one area of progress that TV mostly has been making this progress. Films haven't quite caught up to it. Is the appreciation for brevity. Where you're going, I'm not saying I want a whole nother 2-season series. What if it was just, 10 episodes? I wouldn't care. It could be like a TV movie for all I care, so long as it's done well.
Well, what just show figured that out? Because it certainly wasn't Arrow.
Did Arrow ever have a TV movie?
No, but I'm just saying.
I'm saying nowadays there's
brevity. I don't.
Yeah,
see...
I mean, I think a lot. Well, I suppose we like to bash on Disney, so I'll give them the credit where it's due. They've at least. I mean, I think it was a last resort, but they've managed to tone down the Star Wars content a little bit, where they're going, okay, let's at least make sure we can do this good before we do it a lot. So, like, the fact that they've been, like, evidently the new Kenobi show that they're going to do is only going to be, like, 6 episodes, which to me is, like, that's very reasonable.
Because they have a partner with Marvel now, and Marvel's actually teaching them a thing or two.
Well, someone needed to. And Marvel, I suppose perhaps I should give the credit to Marvel then. But it's like, because, again, Marvel's in a similar state where we're going, okay, you did your big 24 movies building up to the big 2-movie climactic 4-hour-long showdown.
Right.
Could we have a break, maybe?
Well, they did really well at going back and doing the shows rather than the movies without making
the shows short, from what I gather. And I think that there's a lesson to be learned there, is my point. Not saying it's taking as fast as it should, but that's where I go, you know what, if they released of 6 episodes of Gravity Falls when the kids are, like, grown up, not like grown up, but, you know, high school age, because they're middle schoolers in the thing. They're like 12. That's the whole point. Oh, well, that's... Okay, we'll move on to that. But I just am saying, perhaps I'm recanting an old notion that perhaps it's not as black and white. I mean, it's very dark gray.
I think
it's not a very big gradient, but there's a gradient there.
Yes, it's funny to me that we talk about, how a shame it is that other, fans of a particular franchise can't learn that enough is enough, but then within our own, enjoyment of a franchise, we do the exact same thing.
Well,
so I mean, it's kind of.
I am not excited for whatever Netflix is going to do with Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
I do not trust
That's
that.
a bit of a jump. Sure.
No, my point
Let's
is...
talk about this new entirely
you were
new
just
topic.
saying... Oh, Lord of the Rings is like
I
my
was
biggest...
hardly excited about that one.
But that's my point, is you're saying, oh, well, we do the same things with our fandoms, and I'm like, no, Lord of the Rings is my most favorite film series ever, and I want it left the frick alone.
Well, yeah.
Because I don't want that ruined. So perhaps, I mean, I don't want to... Well, I suppose, what does that say about Gravity Falls? That I'm fine with that being ruined. But I guess, to me, I think the main difference is... It has to be... This, I guess, is perhaps the better way to say it. It's not that I want... It's not that I just want them to make another series. It's more that I appreciate those writers, and I'd like to see those writers continue what they were doing.
Well, what if they did it in a different way? Like, for instance, did you know that the writers of Phineas and Ferb, which I know you enjoyed when you were... I do love
Phineas and Ferb.
Actually released a new one called...
I have seen that. I forget what it's called.
It's called... what is it?
It's on Netflix,
Murphy's...
yes.
Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law of the something or other?
Yeah, it's like... Anyway.
I'm curious just because I happened to see it, and it was one of those things. And I think
it's a very similar
There's a spirit. I think there's a spirit of it. Because I just saw the trailer for it, and I was like, oh, this kind of has a Phineas and Ferb vibe.
Yeah, it definitely
And then there's
does.
like, and it just shows the names, and I'm like, oh, it's those guys. So I think perhaps what I really want is just for writers and people of creativity to be given a little bit of freedom.
Well,
because...
That's more of a problem with the institutions.
Well, exactly. Perhaps that's what
We're
it is.
Penetrating the bureaucracy.
Well, because it's... Again, here's the whole point. Here's the whole thing. To take it back to a very well-known example that we have plenty of thoughts on. Ooh, what's his name? I think Ken Levine, guy who directed BioShock, directed it. He was the spearhead of that game. From what I understand, he didn't have a whole lot of input in BioShock 2 because he was basically told by the studio, make another one. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, okay, I gotta come up with a reason for this to exist, and it feels contrived because it is contrived and It's not as good.
Yep.
Years later, he then gets the idea for BioShock Infinite, and you can tell that it's very much a spiritual successor. That's why we have that term, because it captures the spirit of the original.
Well, and there's something to be said about when you can get
and everyone can agree that BioShock Infinite, whether or not you like it, I've heard some people say it's still not as good as BioShock 1.
I love it.
I like it too. Whether or not it's as good as the first, I think that's entirely up to your subjective taste, but I've never met a person who thinks 2 is better than it. And if I did, I would run.
Yeah, I would.
So I guess my point is, what's their guys' names? Jeff Marsh and... and the other guy, Phineas and Ferb guys.
Oh, I don't
Dan
know.
Povenmire.
Yeah.
I like them, so when I hear they're doing a new thing, I'll want to know about it. And it doesn't have to be Phineas and Ferb. I'm totally fine with it not to be Phineas and Ferb. Just because I liked Phineas and Ferb doesn't mean I need that.
Well, it's an appreciation for the artist, not the art.
Yes, and I suppose that's more of what I'm longing for these days.
You don't want to recreate the exact same piece. You just have to, or even build off of that piece. You have to just say, well, I'm an artist and I'm going to continue to create.
Because, and I suppose that's more what I'm wishing for. Well, so maybe I forget their names.
Wishing. Just kidding.
I forget their names. The guys who did Gravity Falls, one of whom, total tangent because he was not the main guy, but one of whom is Matt Chapman from Homestar.
Ah.
He was not a major writer, but he wrote a few episodes and was a consultant and he did the occasional voice. It's not like he did a lot of them. But that's a brief aside. It's fun to know that he was involved in that because there's certainly a degree of Homestar-y humor in it. The slightly dataist, absurdist humor that I appreciate, which is probably why Gravity Falls appealed to me. So I guess
what I'm saying
to me, I would love it if those guys did a Gravity Falls themed spin-off just because but again, I wouldn't want anyone to tell them to do it. I wouldn't want them to do it because I want it. I'd want them to do it because they have an interesting idea.
I would go just as far as to say a creative artist, when controlled by bureaucrats, for lack of a better term, is going to find their art to be sterile and cold and not...
Well, it's the song, again, we'll redound to Billy Joel because he's right about all things. It's the song The Entertainer.
Right.
Where you're going, he wrote that song, I believe that was... The whole point of that song is about the process of publishing his... I think it was the second album? Yes, it was. Because there's a gag in it about Piano Man, if you know the secret. You should also read the Billy Joel biography. That's where I get all my Billy Joel facts from, because it's a great book if you really like Billy Joel. That's the whole point of it, is you're going, when a studio forces you to create something, it's going to be a kind of a not fun process, because none of it's going to be as genuine as you want. None of it's going to have the spirit that the other stuff did, because you did it under force rather than under creative compulsion. And so you should listen to the song, because it's great, and it's a great message about this.
If I can expand just a slight bit, it's a bit of a tangent, but more of a...
You want to talk about Elton John?
No, no.
Thank you for clarifying.
This is a bit of a different situation. However, the fact still remains that the creative brilliance behind the show is the thing that kept it going in a positive manner.
Which show are we talking about now?
A lot of gearheads or car fans liked the show Top Gear. They used to be great. And then and then it got really bad because the bottom line is the part of it was that
not a part. It was all of why that show went down.
I'm just saying there was a lot of tension between the management and between the actual people that were making the show happen, essentially.
The BBC,
here's the thing.
We don't have to couch this. The BBC, and I think the BBC, they're smart enough to know that they knew they
screwed that up royally.
Well, no, not even that. I think they knew they were tying the noose when they made the decision to cut Clarkson.
Well, yes.
But arguably, from what I gather, it was a degree of a management decision where they're going on precedent. We have to.
Well, and that's what I'm saying.
On a certain level, I sort of have to respect that they're going based on precedent. We're going to have to kneecap ourselves because they knew Top Gear wasn't going to last without him. Because had Hammond and May stuck on, which they wouldn't have, but even if they had, the show wouldn't have been as good. And I'm sure everyone at BBC knew, if we fire Clarkson, the others are going.
Right.
And so they basically knew, we're killing Top Gear by doing this. So there's a part of me that respects them for sticking to their guns with that.
But what I'm saying was...
The problem is they tried to keep it going.
And exactly. The creative genius, once it left, and I think there's a degree of chemistry even.
Oh, 100%.
That happens within actors.
Well, they're not actors. They're just people.
Well, yes, but I'm saying within that show...
Exaggerated, sure, but...
But they're creators, is the bottom line. They're artists, really.
Yeah, certainly.
You could classify it in a different manner, but
you cannot counter Hammerman. That's the one thing you need
to... I'm trying to roll away. That's what I just...
Well,
it doesn't pick up on the fact that I'm hitting A to juke, but whatever.
To juke. Well, finish your topic and we'll call it a close.
So...
Talking about...
Anyway, So if you have not seen then Grand Tour, it's basically them giving a big old fat middle finger to him and saying, well, we're going to stick it to you and say,
I don't
who
know
cares?
But see, that makes it sound more spiteful. I don't think it was a stick it to you. It was more just
like,
we're going to keep going because the people are going to follow us.
Well, and they knew that too.
Well, yeah, and I think BBC knew that. That's why it's a mix of like, I respect the decision that they basically knew we're going to stand for our principles despite the fact that it's going to totally destroy the show.
But I also respect
I do think they were...
the artists that went, we're just going to continue cracking on.
Yeah.
Like
I just think, to me, I would have respected them all the more if they just went, well, we're just canceling Top Gear.
Yeah.
Because they should have known it wasn't going to work, and they've put a bunch of people through a bunch of suffering trying to have them fill the show.
Well,
fill the shoe of the show.
I'm sorry, but
if it was me, I would resign on air.
Yeah.
Episode 1, I'm the new face of Top Gear. I'd go, I'm sorry for this. I'm leaving now.
If I'm getting smaller, it's because I'm leaving.
Yeah. Anyways.
Anyway, that.
So this is perhaps this is just the contrast to that one conversation we had about things needing to end. Is not universally things need to end, but just let things happen naturally. If a creator...
Which is woo-way, which we'll get into later.
Sure. We already had our Taoist discussion. Let's just ride that wave. But let things...
Wow, how prescient of you.
Well, wave. What is... That's... What? What are you trying to...
Well... Okay, we're not going to get into it right now.
But that's why I'm questioning why you brought it up.
1 minute. Well, I'm just saying it's very apropos.
Well, sure. They're not going to know that because we're going to have to at least pause. We're going to have to break soon.
Well, you'll have to come back for...
Well, should we do it in the middle of the fight?
Oh, well, I suppose that's true. But the bottom line is...
Let's do it in the middle of the fight.
In a very... brief term, and then we'll actually unpack it fully maybe in the next episode. Is Wu Wei is basically just inner. It's like inner nature, basically just letting things happen. For the way that they happen.
So there you go. If the creator wants to make a thing, I would be glad to hear it. I just don't want anyone making them do it.
Don't force it.
It's my same opinion on government.